Leading PropTech advocacy group PropTech BNE, in association with the PropTech Association of Australia, have conducted a major survey of the country's emerging PropTech scene. The survey, aimed at supporting the nation's PropTech ecosystem, received over 4,000 responses from 130 participating companies. Joining us today to explain the findings of the survey is Isaac Coonan, founder of PropTech BNE. Thanks for joining us on The Urban Developer, Isaac.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, let's start with the reason. What was the survey and why was it conducted in the first place?
Look, I suppose at the core of why we decided to conduct this survey is as everyone knows, the PropTech economy is booming around the world, but the lack of actual tangible data to indicate growth patterns, to indicate how, as an emerging economy, we are servicing the property sector was largely based on sentiment. And it's from my experience in working in different innovation clusters here in Australia and around the world that sentiment data can get you to the first step. But to really take the second and third step in creating impact for an emerging technology cluster, there really needs to be tangible data. And that was really the premise for conducting this national survey.
So how did you go about things? I mean, what was the methodology undertaken to try to create the data and understand the sentiment?
Look, I don't think surveys is a particularly new thing. We definitely took the approach of looking at what other surveys, particularly for the innovation ecosystem, have done over the past years. Pulling from the Startup Muster, Startup Daily, the FinTech report, we really captured and distilled what pieces of data industry and government bodies generally need to see to validate an emerging technology cluster and really drive support. So we distilled and we created the survey that really took into account all aspects of the emerging property technology ecosystem, from funding to companies being founded to what sectors of the property economy they're choosing to serve. So the survey for us was as holistic as possible, with ensuring that it wasn't too difficult for companies and founders to complete, knowing full well that if you give someone a survey that takes them 20 minutes to fill out, the drop-off rate is huge. So it took a bit of planning to really get the survey to where it needed to be, but the response rate that we had from the national PropTech economy really did indicate that we have, not only was the survey user-friendly, but it was also something that the emerging technology cluster knew was something that was needed.
Yeah, well, it's obvious in 4,000 responses and about 130 different companies that was a success. So what did the survey reveal then about the profile of founders in Australia?
Look, again, the survey didn't actually unearth anything that was different to sentiment. A lot of the sentiment when it came to PropTech founders was it was a different technology cluster to what we're used to seeing in the innovation world. It was less of a, let's start a startup because we want to be a founder. It was less of a, let's join an innovation hub and be part of the broader startup economy. The data really showed that the average age of a PropTech founder here in Australia was over the age of 40, and 58% of PropTech founders had a minimum of 11 years experience in the property sector. What this tells us is the vast majority of PropTech founders here in AU have experience in the sector, have obviously experienced particular pain points or inefficiencies over their tenure, and they have then decided to go and change that. So from what we're seeing in the data and what sentiment was really pointing us towards is PropTech founders are property professionals who have kind of got a bit fed up with a certain aspect or a certain inefficiency within the economy, particularly the property economy, and have taken it upon themselves to make that change.
I can certainly relate to that. So now let's tell us about, where these organisations are clustered and the different ecosystems that are existing across the country. Where are the companies located and what are their general expansion plans too?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No surprise here that when we did do this national survey, a very large majority of applicants or submissions came from Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. This is common when we do look at other innovation clusters more broadly. However, we did have great take-up from South Australia and from ACT and Tasmania, which really shows that PropTechs are being founded wherever there is a property economy, which is what we like to see. In terms of key clusters, what was surprising, probably one of the only bits of data that was surprising from this survey, was over 40% of all PropTechs in Australia are founded in Queensland. Now, when you actually look at the property sector, particularly from residential real estate, that's not overly surprising when you take into account that the majority of Australia or APAC head offices for residential real estate franchises are based here. We also have a phenomenal commercial real estate cluster that are leading and driving the technology hubs out of Brisbane. CBRE is a perfect example, with their CBRE host platform and development team being based just down on Eagle Street. So whilst other states are definitely performing and creating PropTechs, the vast majority are coming from Queensland. When you look at expansion, again, it shouldn't be of any surprise to anyone. The US and Canada were the highest ranked in terms of expansion interests and focuses for the next 24 months. Over 40% of Australian PropTechs are looking to scale into the US and Canada. And then underneath that was 23% of all PropTechs are looking to scale into the UK. A lot of sentiment has suggested, though, that particularly when it comes to property law, PropTechs looking to scale into Commonwealth countries have a far smoother global expansion process than trying to crack a beast such as the US.
Interesting. I find it fascinating that, you know, fintech, the home is Melbourne and Sydney, whereas PropTech is a little more skewed towards in Queensland as well. So what sort of sectors are these companies playing in? What kind of problems are they trying to solve within the property sector? Can you help us understand the mix?
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of companies that did participate in this survey are servicing the residential real estate market, and that's anything from AI-driven CRM systems to support sales teams, all the way through to digital marketing solutions. We do then have a large majority looking to service the commercial and development sector. Now, the technology for the development sector of the property economy is slightly more advanced than what we're seeing in the residential real estate PropTech sector. Resi, you're really looking at those sales tools, CRMs, marketing capabilities, where on the development and commercial real estate side, you're actually seeing a real pull towards digital twin applications to mitigate or reduce wastes in construction, geospatial mapping for planning, data analytics for large precincts. So the technology is actually a lot deeper when we go into the development and construction sector. So that's number one. Number two, and the number three is property managers, and that's across the board from resi through to commercial and precincts.
Right, interesting. And what about the typical size and scale of these businesses? When we talk about PropTech, when we talk about startups, it's a wide sort of spectrum of businesses. What's the typical size and scale of the companies that you survey?
Look, it's something that's a bit hard to get an accurate pulse on, particularly seeing this survey is designed to be pulling data from revenue generating PropTechs. So that is from companies that are sub 500K annual revenue, been going for a year, have one or two staff, all the way up to the likes of Console and Pexa, who are juggernauts in the PropTech world. So to say what the average is quite difficult. The data did show that of the companies founded since 2017, the average staff size or FTE count for PropTechs is between 7 to 11 full-time employees. The breakdown of those staff is really technical. So we are seeing that the vast majority of emerging tech companies are really doubling down on ensuring they have the technical and digital capabilities from a staff standpoint to really make sure that their tech is robust, their platform is capable of servicing the industry before they look at hiring those sales, marketing capabilities internally.
Yeah. Let's talk about funding. It's the big question in this space. And obviously those familiar with the United States and other parts of the world, often their eyes water when they talk about the funding that's available for PropTech. But what's the state of funding in Australia and what did the survey reveal?
So for this question, we actually thought it prudent to ensure that we were asking companies that were still in business, that were still trading, and that hadn't been acquired. So what our data showed is we're just shy of $100 million worth of venture capital or angel capital being poured into this sector over the past decade. Now, again, that number is probably a lot higher when you take into account that there has been a number of incredible acquisitions and sadly a number of companies that did receive funding that are no longer in operation. That just shy of 100 million is companies that are still going strong and are still powering ahead today. Now, this is something that we thought was a little bit interesting, and we're interested to unpack it a little bit more. When you look at the investment patterns, the vast majority of capital being poured into the sector is actually coming from New South Wales. So I think it's 45.3% of all VC funding for PropTech is currently coming out of Sydney and New South Wales, which is great. But when we look at the fact that Queensland is creating 40% of all PropTechs in Australia, it's a bit interesting to understand that Sydney is actually where the funding is. So again, we're kind of unpacking that now with a lot of the local VCs here in Queensland, but then more broadly around Australia to understand, well, how are those investment patterns working? But again, seeing something of that size indicates that this is an area, or this is a technology cluster of interest for the industry.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people getting on planes from Queensland down to New South Wales. And just finally, what are some of the big challenges at the moment for the PropTech scene? How are these being overcome, and where are the opportunities do you see over the next couple of years?
Personally, from my experience in working in the innovation industry, I was really heartened to see that there wasn't a cry for free stuff, which unfortunately does seem to be the case with a lot of different startup ecosystems around Australia. It's, we want free capital, we want free workspace, that wasn't actually what the PropTech economy were asking for. A lot of the key troubles, a lot of the key areas of support being asked for from the survey were really coming from access to industry. Whilst I said that the vast majority of PropTech founders have a very successful tenure in the space, more often than not, that's siloed to a particular field. So, perfect example, we may have a PropTech founded by an individual who spent 10 years in residential real estate, but their technology has applicability to commercial real estate. That individual doesn't understand the nuances and how commercial real estate or the development or construction ecosystem work. So they're really asking for transparency. The number one ask from the PropTech economy is for industry to be more transparent with how the inner workings of their faction inside the property sector works. How do they procure technology? How do they engage with emerging technology? What are a lot of their pain points? This is a really big thing that the property industry is being a little bit shy on being open about, is where are their struggles? Where are they hitting roadblocks that technology could actually come in and solve? Because that sort of data is crucial to the emerging PropTech economy, because it ensures that the technology solutions being created are actually servicing a pain point of the industry. So across the board, number one was they need industry support, they need government to support around legislation, and they need visibility.
Well, I think this survey has revealed a lot and provide a lot of that visibility to help support the industry. Isaac, thank you so much for your time and for putting together this incredible research. And we will stay in touch with you guys over the coming years. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support.